welcome to NTD China News. I'm Karen Chang. Making headlines this Wednesday, March 13th. An investigator on Chinese organ harvesting speaks in Australia. More dead pigs are appearing in a Shanghai river and authorities insist the water is safe. And why Skype users may be under Chinese surveillance. The state of New South Wales in Australia is considering legislation to cut down on organ trafficking. The state legislators are proposing harsher punishments for residents who obtain organs illegally. On Tuesday, a private investigator of organ harvesting in China came to speak at the parliament.
David Kilgour is one of the private investigators who have researched state-sanctioned organ harvesting in China. He co-authored this book, and is currently in Australia to raise awareness for the alleged crimes. He spoke at the New South Wales Parliament on Tuesday. Lawmakers here are considering a bill that would strictly punish residents for getting trafficked organs abroad.
Any New South Wales resident travelling to any overseas to secure an organ transplant from somebody who is not willingly or handing over that organ, it's an issue which is on the table both in New South Wales and in the Australian context.
David Kilgour is the former Canadian Secretary of State to the Asia Pacific. His book lists overwhelming circumstantial evidence that the organs in China are coming from prisoners of conscience. Based on testimonies, the organs are obtained from leaving prisoners without their consent.
New South Wales is the largest state in Australia, and it's very important that the New South Wales Parliament pass a bill like the one that we heard tonight. And if they did, it would be leadership for the rest of the country.
The proposed bill builds on existing laws and would impose harsher consequences for citizens who traffic organs. Obtaining a vital organ through illicit means would be equivalent to manslaughter under the proposed bill.
The Transplantation Society of Australia already has as their policy, it's part of their policy, none of their transplant surgeons are allowed to do it. Chinese surgeons who come here must declare that they're not going to participate in those activities and that we're not allowed to, or transplant surgeons are not allowed to train Chinese surgeons who are going to go back and do that.
David Kilgour says that over 65,000 practitioners of the Falun Gong spiritual practice in China have been killed for their organs. Falun Gong is one of many groups in China that are imprisoned illegally.
And if even one of them has been killed by an Australian citizen, then that's one too many.
NTD News, New South Wales, Australia.
It's enough to make you gag. Over 6,000 dead pigs have washed up in Shanghai's drinking water, but authorities are saying it's perfectly fine to drink.
Over 6,000 dead pigs have washed up in Shanghai's Huangpu River, and it's starting to smell.
They won't have a big influence on our navigation when we navigate on the waterway, but the problem is the bad smell. Dead pigs become putrid and stink after a long time floating in the river. When we navigate through the waterway, the smell is terrible, really terrible. It will have a bad influence on our breathing. When we breathe, it's really terrible.
The wave of pig corpses began late last week, and to the terror of Shanghai's millions of residents, they were found in one of the city's main water sources. But despite the rotting pigs and the foul smell, officials insist this water is safe to drink.
The residents can feel safe about their drinking water, according to the lab sample testing results. If there are any abnormal conditions, we will report to related government departments and adopt corresponding measures.
That hasn't been much reassurance to Shanghai residents, especially after a test found that a water sample from the Huangpu River contained porcine circovirus, a virus affecting pigs but harmless to humans. The virus was once thought to be mostly benign, but in 2008, researchers at Purdue University discovered the virus had mutated into a more deadly form. Authorities say they're still finding out where the pigs came from. For now, pig farms in Zhejiang's Jixing City are being accused of dumping diseased pigs. On Monday, a Zhejiang agricultural official denied that the pigs died were killed by disease, but claimed instead that they froze to death.
More than 600 million people use Skype. It's the Microsoft-owned software that allows you to use chat and video to communicate online. But there have always been security and privacy concerns with Skype, and there's a good reason why.
The Chinese Communist Party heavily censors its citizens, but that censorship reaches beyond Chinese borders, and some Western companies may even accommodate the regime. Meet TOM-Skype. It's the alter ego of Microsoft's Skype. the online communication tool used by 600 million. TOM-Skype is the version that mainland Chinese people use, and an American PhD student has spent the last 2 years unraveling its censorship functions. Jeffrey Knockel has decrypted a list of words that TOM-Skype downloads on the user's computers. When the words appear in chats, those conversations are no longer private.
So when you use one of these keywords in one of your messages, that message will get sent to Tom's servers, along with information about the sender, the receiver, date and time.
96 million people in China use Skype, but that doesn't mean foreign users are immune to Chinese surveillance.
They are also under surveillance, just by virtue of the person using TOM-Skype. Any message that's sent or received by the person using TOM-Skype can possibly trigger the surveillance.
Knockel says he has not found evidence of what TOM-Skype does with this data, but there is suspicion.
It's certainly a problem. I'd like to see Microsoft or someone like that maybe try to address this and just having there be more transparency for people using Skype as to whether they're talking to TOM-Skype. So the risk is that you might be under surveillance and not know it, and then what happens from there? What happens to surveillance messages again? Once they're sent to Tom's servers, we don't really know what to do with them.
In January, a group of advocates publicly asked Skype and Microsoft to explain exactly what they do with user information. So far, there's been no response. Officially, Skype says it protects users' privacy. Chats, like video calls and file transfers, are meant to be encrypted. But in response to inquiries from Bloomberg, Microsoft said TOM-Skype had to meet Chinese legal requirements. That's even when those legal requirements mean the privacy of users outside of China may be compromised.
And still ahead on NTD China news, how China's online censorship is costing businesses. A global mining giant denies corruption allegations over its Beijing Olympic sponsorship, and meet one couple in Phoenix, Arizona, learning to appreciate the beauty of traditional Chinese culture. And welcome back. China is an attractive place to do business, and that's why major multinational firms have been eager to invest and set up shop in the country. But the business environment there is different to what most are used to, especially under the Chinese regime's vague and very present censorship rules. This, according to one expert, is costing Western companies.
China's intense online surveillance doesn't just affect Chinese internet users and their ability to access information freely. As more and more Western entities engage with the country, operating under the Chinese regime's censorship can be costly.
The first is that in order to do that kind of censorship, you also need to be able to see everything that travels online. You need to be able to tap into it and see what people are talking about. And that means that very strong encryption, very strong protective code that businesses like financial institutions or large companies use as a matter of practice to protect their internal communications are seen as problematic.
Danny O'Brien, a longtime activist for online free speech and privacy, says there are also other risks. Just to stay away from murky censorship laws, Western companies sometimes have to compromise.
And there's also pressure on companies, internet companies, to exercise a degree of self-censorship, to self-discipline their own services, so that if they see something that they know may raise red flags amongst the leadership, they'll delete those messages or block those accounts. So that definitely slows down what we traditionally think of as the free flow of opinion and information online.
China has become a popular destination for Western companies, hoping to capitalize on its lucrative market. But that investment doesn't always pay off, as in the case of search engine giant Google.
Companies like Google have hit this in China, where Google's a reasonably good service. It's popular elsewhere. It's popular it's comparable to a local service like Baidu, but Google throughout its history in China has gone down and been blocked and interfered with, and that just has the effect of people not wanting to use it anymore.
Google was forced to pull out of the Chinese search engine market in 2010 after it refused to comply with Chinese censorship laws. In 2011, the U.S. filed a WTO ruling against China to find out how the Chinese regime's blocking of certain websites is creating trade barriers for U.S. businesses.
Mining giant BHP Billiton has confirmed today it's being investigated for corruption over sponsorship deals for the Beijing Olympics. The US Department of Justice and the Australian Federal Police are trying to uncover whether BHP sponsorship was used to gain advantage in the Chinese market. The US-Australian mining company supplied the materials for the Olympic medals. It also spent millions on official sponsorship and hospitality packages. Amongst the VIPs it hosted was senior communist officials and other Chinese company executives. BHP is the largest mining company in the world, and China is its biggest market. Business favors such as these are not uncommon in Chinese companies, but in the US, paying for the entertainment and lodging of government officials breaches foreign bribery laws. BHP says it's cooperating with investigations. It says it did nothing wrong and that it complied with US and Australian anti-graft laws. If found guilty in the US, BHP and the individuals involved face up to 5 years in prison and fines up to $2 million. March 10th was the 54th anniversary of the failed Tibetan uprising against Chinese rule. Tibetan women in northern India took to the streets to commemorate the event and to appeal for Tibetans being suppressed in China.
Tibetan women in northern India staged a rally on Tuesday to protest against Chinese atrocities in Tibet. They were also commemorating the 54th anniversary of the Tibetan uprising. The Regional Tibetan Women's Association in northern Dahramsala rallied with banners and placards denouncing communist oppression.
I want to say from this message, and please do something for Tibet, of course. And there are so many people who are suffering tortures of China in Tibet, and so please do something for the Tibet who suffer in the Tibet.
This year marks the 54 years of the failed Tibetan uprising in Lhasa against Chinese rule in 1959. It forced the Tibetan spiritual leader, the Dalai Lama, to flee to Dahramsala in India. Tibetans all over the world observed March 10th as the National Uprising Day, with many protests being staged on that day. Most of the women who gathered for the protest rally were schoolgirls and female Buddhist monks. The Chinese regime has defended its iron-fisted rule in Tibet, saying the remote region suffered from dire poverty, serfdom, brutal exploitation, and economic stagnation until 1950, when the Red Army peacefully liberated it. More than 100 Tibetans have set themselves alight in protest against Chinese rule since 2009.
New York-based Shiiin Performing Arts has been making the rounds across the U.S. Over the weekend, one couple who saw a performance in Arizona learned the beauty of Chinese culture through Shiiin.
Shiiin Performing Arts played Phoenix, Arizona on March 10th at the Orpheum Theater. Practicing psychiatrist Robert Costas and his wife were delighted by the show.
A beautiful synthesis, a unity of music, color, dance, motion, and spiritual message that I just enjoyed to see it interwoven into the dance routines and the vocalists. It gives me great hope, and I feel better after having been here. It gives me hope that such beauty, such dance groups are alive and thriving.
I didn't know what to expect. I've always been attracted to Oriental Asian entertainment, but I had no idea what to expect here. I was just amazed at the overall influence of the dance and how everyone just had so much energy, and the dance and the song, the songs and the orchestration behind the dance. It was just a lovely combination of music and movement and color that was amazing, and it just left me feeling very uplifted and very happy to have been here today.
The very beginning, where this view of infinity and this magnificent Buddha of infinity, of the cosmos, is coming here to earth to bring a message of joy and beauty and salvation of humanity. That was astounding. The special effects and the photography and the stage sets. I have a hobby of painting, which I haven't done for a long time, and I was trying to paint the sets to copy them in my mind, what I would like to do in the future. And all of this came together in such wonderful, wonderful, amazing beauty. And I wish American youth could appreciate this. I'd like to see American youth get involved in this kind of classical, traditional beauty.
The couple say they will recommend Shiiin to all their families and friends and want sound recordings of the show to give as Christmas and birthday presents.
And that's all for this broadcast of NTD China News. For more of our China-related content, visit our website at ntd.tv or subscribe to our YouTube channel, NTD on China. Coming up next is a segment of the 9 commentaries of the Communist Party. Stay tuned.